The anniversary gift sat in the trunk of my car for 11 days. A small silver bracelet, nothing extravagant. I bought it during a lunch break, wrapped it in blue paper, and promised myself I would give it to my husband that evening. Then another meeting appeared on my calendar. Then another deadline. Then another excuse that sounded responsible at the time. The bracelet never made it into the house. If you stay with me, I'll tell you how I spent 43 years climbing a ladder that led exactly where I wanted and still arrived somewhere I never meant to be. At 80 years old, I know what work can give a person. I also know what it quietly takes away. I know because I spent more than 2 decades leaving my office after dark, because I still remember the sound of my husband's footsteps waiting for me at 9:17 every night, and because one missed anniversary became the memory that follows me more faithfully than any achievement ever has. My name is Margaret. I am 80 years old now. The plaques, awards, and framed certificates that once covered my office walls are stacked in cardboard boxes in the attic. Dust has settled on all of them, but I can still tell you the exact color of the ribbon around that bracelet. And that is where this story begins. It didn't happen in one decision. That's the lie people like me tell themselves when they look back. It happened in small, polite sacrifices. The first time I missed dinner, I was 38. It was a Tuesday in May, 1984. My husband, Robert, stood by the kitchen table with 2 plates already getting cold. He didn't argue. He just asked, "Is this one of those nights again?" Like he already knew the answer and was only checking if I would admit it. I said yes, and I left before he finished his meal. By the time I reached 45, I stopped counting missed dinners and started counting promotions instead. People clapped when my name appeared on internal lists. I remember once in 1991, a director told me, "You're the only one who still answers emails at 11 p.m. I took that as a compliment. Robert stopped saying anything at all after a while. That silence was worse than anger. It didn't push me away, it simply made space for my absence. And then there were the anniversaries. We had a rule, no matter how busy, we would always have that one evening in June. Just us. No phones, no work talk. The first time I broke that rule, I was supposed to stay late for one urgent report. It wasn't urgent. I remember seeing myself in the office glass at 8:03 p.m. adjusting my jacket, telling myself I would make it up to him tomorrow. Tomorrow came and acted like nothing had happened. The years after that blended together. Meetings replaced evenings. Travel replaced conversations. Success replaced time in a way I didn't notice at first because it arrived wearing applause. But at home, something was changing shape. On the nights I did come back early, I would sometimes find Robert sitting in the dark living room, not watching television, not reading, just sitting. Like he had learned how to wait without expecting. And still, I kept going. Because work doesn't ask you to choose loudly. It just keeps offering you one more reason. And I kept saying yes. Scene 1, 2007, 9:41 p.m. I was 52 when I first stopped hearing the front door open. Not because it stopped opening, but because I stopped being there when it did. That evening in October, I was in a glass meeting room on the 14th floor. Someone had brought coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier. My phone vibrated twice. Then again. Robert. I saw his name light up the screen at 9:41 p.m. I told myself I would call back after just 10 more minutes. The meeting ended at 10:18. I called him at 10:23. No answer. I remember standing by the window, watching traffic move like it had somewhere it still needed to be. Scene 2, 2011, hospital waiting room. He didn't tell me he had gone to the hospital alone. I found out because I arrived late to a meeting and saw a voicemail I had ignored earlier. "Nothing serious," he said in the message. His voice was careful, like he didn't want to take too much space inside my day. When I called back, a nurse answered first. Then silence. Then words I still hear when the house is too quiet. He had been waiting there since morning. Alone. I sat in my car outside the hospital for 17 minutes before I could breathe properly enough to walk in. When I finally did, he was already discharged. Scene 3, 2016, empty kitchen table. The last anniversary I remember clearly was not celebrated. It was just scheduled. I had a conference call at 7 p.m. that could not be moved. I said that exact phrase out loud while tying my shoes. Robert was at the kitchen table. There were 2 cups of tea. One of them was untouched. He looked at me and asked almost gently, "Do you still remember what day it is?" I checked my watch out of habit. "I'll make it up to you this weekend," I said. He nodded once. No anger, no raised voice, just understanding in a way that felt like distance forming in real time. I left at 6:52 p.m. I did not look back at the table, and I did not know that was the last time I would ever leave him waiting. The call came on a Thursday morning. 6:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had been awake already, answering emails before my alarm even rang. The screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize, and for a second I almost ignored it like I had learned to ignore everything that wasn't urgent enough. But something in my chest tightened, so I answered. It was a nurse. Her voice didn't rush. That was the worst part. Slow voices usually mean there is nothing left to fix. "Mrs. Miller," she said, "your husband passed away last night." I remember standing up too quickly. The chair hit the floor behind me. I didn't feel it. There were more words after that, but they didn't land anywhere. I kept thinking last night, not sometime, not recently. Last night had a shape, a time I could measure. Then I heard myself ask something that still haunts me more than the news itself. "Was anyone with him?" A pause. "No," she said softly. "He was alone." The room didn't change. That's what I remember most. The room stayed exactly the same while my life didn't. I drove to the hospital without remembering traffic, without remembering lights, without remembering anything except one thought repeating itself like a broken clock. I should have been there. I should have been there. I should have been there. At the hospital, they gave me a small plastic bag. Inside was his watch. Stopped at 9:18. And suddenly I knew the truth I had avoided for years without ever saying it out loud. There was no later anymore. Only everything I had postponed. A pause. They told me I should take time to grieve. I didn't know how to explain that I had already been grieving him for years, just in smaller pieces, without admitting it. At home that night, I found the kitchen exactly as I had left it. The second cup was still there. Dry rings on the table. A silence so familiar it felt rehearsed. I sat down and did something I hadn't done in decades. I opened my work calendar. Meetings, deadlines, calls marked urgent. Small red flags next to words that once meant importance. I looked at all of it and realized something simple, almost humiliating in its clarity. I had treated my life like it could always be rescheduled. But there is a place where rescheduling stops working. I call it the unpaid hour, the moment you finally understand that everything you postponed still collected interest. Not in money, in absence. People think love disappears in arguments or betrayal. That's not what happened to us. It disappeared in 10-minute delays. In "I'll come later." In "not tonight." In just one more meeting. And now I sit here, asking myself a question I can never answer. If I had left 5 minutes earlier on those nights, would he still have waited for me longer? You may think this is about work. It isn't. It is about the quiet belief that someone will always be there when you finally decide to show up. He wasn't. I still keep the bracelet. Not because it belongs to the past, but because it refuses to stay there. It's in the same small blue box. The paper is torn now at one corner. I never replaced it. I don't think I deserve the illusion of something untouched anymore. Sometimes, in the early morning, I take it out and hold it in my palm. It's colder than I remember. Or maybe I am the one who changed. The house is quieter now than it was in those last years with Robert. Back then, I thought silence meant peace. Now I know it can also mean absence that learned your schedule. There are days when I still reach for my phone out of habit, thinking about meetings that no longer matter. My hand stops halfway, because there is no one waiting at the other end of my delay anymore. Only me, and the echo of everything I once said I would do later. Work gave me everything it promised. Titles, stability, respect. A full calendar that once made me feel needed. But it never warned me about the empty chair that would still be there when I finally had time to notice it. If I could speak to the woman I was at 52, standing in that glass meeting room, I would not shout. I would simply ask her to look at her watch. Not to check the time, but to understand what it was already taking from her. Because work can replace your time, but it can never return it.